there is such a thing as financial security. My deduction is this, and here's two pieces of data. One, I meet a lot of people that have a ton of money that feel financially insecure. And I meet a lot of people that I would say have little money and they feel wildly financially secure. They're happy and content and they're on track to be where they want to be later in life. So if those two things are truth, people can have a lot of money and feel financially insecure, and people can have little money and feel financially secure, then it leads me to believe that financial security is kind of an emotional state. It's an emotion. It has nothing to do with the number of money, like number of dollars you have, right? So, and this is a perfect example. Your story, you shared a story about somebody you helped. You took them through your process,
right? And
through your process, you changed some of their actions, some of their behaviors, and you didn't change. Like you didn't give them $1 million. You didn't double their money in 3 months.
Right.
You simply made a couple changes, gave them a couple ideas, implemented a couple things, reduced debt, not all the way, just reduced it, and you started a savings plan.
Yeah.
And that was enough to give them hope. We're trying to step up our game a little bit, so we're going to have a little bit of fun in this episode, trying out some new tools. Hopefully the sound is coming through clearer, and hopefully the video quality is a step up from what we've been doing as well. Regardless, the content is the focus, and we hope that is still wonderful for you guys. We love feedback and we love input. So if you have any questions or any complaints or whatever, of any ways that we can improve the show, we have thick skin. Send them, and we'll get on it. So with that said, I want to introduce Bill McGill. He is the newest addition to the Harpeth Wealth family of advisors.
What's going on, everybody?
And we're gonna get to know him a little bit before we jump into the actual content today. Why we wanted to bring in another advisor is I think that we're doing an incredible job of learning how to serve our clients just in a different way, in a better way. We're focusing on the right things. We're focused on a lot to do with the emotions of finances, and we're planning around how people interact with money, and we're learning about people at different periods of life to apply kind of groupthink to the things that you're going to maneuver through while still like maintaining that individual focus. So we really are trying to break the mold when it comes to how we work with our clients, and we're looking for special people. So Bill qualified. He is one of those special people. And what better way to get to know somebody to ask them a few questions that they don't know are coming their way. So with that, Bill,
Yes,
favorite
sir.
book. Tell me your favorite book. Tell me why it's your favorite book.
Favorite book? All right. Well, I'd say the book that I just finished recently was a really good read. I just finished Endure by Cameron Haynes. If anybody's into kind of the motivational space, or if you've listened to Joe Rogan, you've probably heard of Cameron Haynes before. And the guy's a professional bow hunter, so he hunts everything with his bow, and he's also a crazy endurance athlete. Runs about a marathon a day.
Which is insane.
Yeah.
It's hard. That's hard to believe, but a lot of people have called him out, and it seems to be very true.
Yeah, and he's actually...
Look, we're just to say that again. Sorry to cut you off. A marathon a day.
A day.
Yeah.
And up until recently, also had a 9-to-5 job. So, he's got a YouTube channel, and it's fun to watch. But, he'd wake up in the middle of the night, 3 a.m., and go out for a run. And then he'd go to work, and in his lunch break would run again, and then he'd go home and lift weights and shoot his bow, and has a family and all these other things going on. So Endure was just about his story, where he grew up, where he came from, kind of trying to explain why he is the way that he is. And it was a really good book. It was really motivational.
So you guys listening have no excuse. Job, family,
Zero.
Marathon a day. Let's get after it. All right. How did you find yourself in the profession of financial planning?
It's a great question. I graduated with an exercise physiology degree from the University of Cincinnati, and decided to kind of go off into a sales direction right after school, and basically decided that wasn't exactly for me. So I quit the job that I had right out of school. I traveled Europe with my now wife for about a month, which is the best thing I ever did. That was so much fun. Yeah. And then came back and started looking at, just where I was going to start again. What was I good at? What was I interested in? Personal finance is something I've always been something that's always been interesting to me. And at the same time, I love coaching and teaching people. So kind of started looking at my options within that, right? And got hired on by a bigger corporate wirehouse, and I was with them for basically 5 years.
Wow.
Was with them, and decided to kind of take control of my own destiny, so to speak, and come on here with you guys and start running, our business, my own business, all at the same time. And yeah, super excited to be here.
So there are countless decisions that people make, and there's countless options when it comes to choosing a financial planner to work with. I think our process is very, very unique in a lot of ways. What's one of your most unique, things that people can, what's one of the most unique things that you do with people?
Yeah, so I try and make it, try and take a really big bear of a subject, something that's, in a lot of people's eyes, very, very complicated. The world of finance is, very complicated, and a lot of different advisors out there, a lot of different companies try and separate themselves through the details of that complexity. Try and make things look maybe a little harder than they necessarily are. So the one thing that I've always tried to do with people is be the guy that you can go to that takes a really big, complex subject that maybe you know very little about, and chop it up into bite-sized pieces so that anybody can understand it. And my goal is always, at the end of my appointment, is I want to have learned as much as I can about the person within the given period of time, but I also want to leave them with one to three things. Usually it's a 1, 2, 3 process after of our next steps, to really take action and give them something that they can go home that night and start implementing in their own lives. So,
which is awesome, because that aligns with something that if you guys have been listening to a long time, you've heard us mention sprints, right? Like, that's the idea, is big concept, big dreams, big goals, lots of distance between where you're at now and where you're going. It's a marathon, right? A marathon of uphills, downhills. We're going to have to stop and take a knee a couple times, water stations, like all these things that we do when we're running through that marathon of life. Sometimes it becomes so overwhelming. We just don't, we leave this big strategic meeting and we just don't know what to do. Like, how do I start? So something that we pride ourselves in is every strategic meeting ends with, here's your sprint, here's your next step. And we always send them. So that's something we noticed about you, and we love that, and we love that you're tying into that with us too. Can you tell me a story of a time where your unique approach, that next step, kind of came together and impacted somebody, like a client that works with you?
Sure. So the first one that comes to mind was a client who called into the office, and they had called around to a number of different financial advisors in the area, and no one had actually called him back because of his financial situation. And I was the one that called him back, and we met in office, and he was he came in asking about how to start planning for retirement, essentially, and he just wasn't quite there yet. We needed to take a step back and do a couple of different things first. But he had about 5 or 6 different debt payments that were kind of weighing him down and really affecting his situation. And more than that, he was in a kind of a hopeless place. I mean, he came to me and said, I think I'll be working till I die, and I don't think I'll ever be able to retire, was kind of the underlying thread there. And I immediately saw that as a challenge and took the 1 through 3 step approach and just said, hey man, I think I can help you here. We're going to just walk through this together. And in the next couple of months, we're going to do A, B, and C, and we're going to see where that gets us. And then after that, we're going to do, A, B, C again, I guess.
Yeah.
And in a couple of months, he had, let's call it 6 debt payments. He now only has 2. It freed up about $1,500 worth of cash flow for him every single month. Now he's saving for retirement. We're building up that muscle, if you will. And he's just in a 180 different degree direction, not only with his personal finances, but he has hope again. He's got, man, I can see how this plan comes together. And I think that's a big thing. People hear a lot of noise from the industry and a lot of things, and they think they should be doing 10 things at the same time. And it can make it hard to see kind of the light at the end of the tunnel, if you will. And so what was nice about that is after just a couple of rounds of that, we're going to do 1, then we're going to do 2, and then we'll do 3. He was already starting to see, okay, how does this plan actually come together?
I think the biggest thing to reinforce there is you took a guy that could not see his future, right? Kind of felt helpless and stuck. And you said that just in a matter of a short amount of time. And it's not even in he didn't get completely out of debt.
Right.
He didn't all of a sudden wind up with $1 million. He made a few changes to his life, saw progress,
yeah,
and then had hope. And that's wildly incredible. Y'all, I had like this, the idea of what we were going to talk about today planned out before Bill and I started talking about like how we were going to kind of flow into this show. I wanted to take some time to introduce him. And, but I want to speak, like the topic that we're going to talk about today just fits so perfect into that. Right. And if you guys got the email on Sunday, if you're in my email group, the topic of the email was this idea that is wildly unscientific. I didn't do some sort of like Duke school of like medical school research, thing. I've been working in this profession for quite some time, and I've noticed a few things. So first of all, if you were to ask me, like, if I could have a superpower, any superpower in the world, I think my superpower would be to be able to like eradicate anxiety for people around me. People that if I'm in your life, if I'm working for you and you're working with me, you would be without any anxiety, right? As a matter of fact, like let's just get rid of all anxiety in the world if it's a superpower, right? But nonetheless, I want people to feel less anxious. And so I'm constantly picking up on like what I call the psychology of money. That's one of the reasons why we talk so much. We call the show Money Therapy, because we're really interested in not so much like, Roth versus traditional or backdoor versus conversion or 401k versus taxable or, term versus whole. Like that's all important stuff. And it's incredibly important to be educated and make good decisions along the way. But really what I'm interested in is what is our relationship with money, right? Like, why do we get so worked up about this tool? Why do we need it? Like, when we have it, why are we afraid to use it? Why do we feel guilty about spending? Why do we feel pressured to talk certain ways about it or spend it if we don't have it because we're around certain people. These are all the important things. This is the stuff that I'm constantly trying to pick up on. It's been a couple years now that I've been like noticing something about this whole idea of financial security, peace of mind. If there is such a thing as financial security, my deduction is this, and here's two pieces of data. One, I meet a lot of people that have a ton of money that feel financially insecure. And I meet a lot of people that I would say have little money and they feel wildly financially secure. They're happy and content and they're on track to be where they want to be later in life. So if those two things are truth, which they are, I mean, there's, like I said, there's not really a scientific study here, but there's data sets of real life interactions I've had. If people can have a lot of money and feel financially insecure, and people can have little money and feel financially secure, then it leads me to believe that financial security is kind of an emotional state. It's an emotion. It has nothing to do with the number of money, like number of dollars you have, right? So, and this is a perfect example. Your story, you shared a story about somebody you helped. You took them through your process.
Right.
And through your process, you changed some of their actions, some of their behaviors. And you didn't change, like you didn't give them $1 million. You didn't you didn't double their money in 3 months.
Right.
You simply made a couple changes, gave them a couple ideas, implemented a couple things, reduced debt, not all the way, just reduced it. And you started a savings plan.
Yeah.
And that was enough to give them hope.
Right.
So I think it's more behavioral, right? What's your thoughts on that?
Well, I definitely agree with a lot of what you said. I think a lot of it has to do with kind of what you said, the idea of making incremental progress. I think that's huge. I think, again, I think a lot of people come to financial advisors looking for direction. I think they have a lot of ideas in their head, and they're probably doing a lot of things right and maybe some things wrong. And just a second set of eyes with us to just say, hey, instead of, paying this off first, maybe pay this off first. And then let me show you how that affects your life. And I think giving people direction as well as those bite-sized pieces, the most motivating thing is to see progress for people. And so I think that, anxiousness or insecurity in this case of where I'm at with my personal finances, I think when you give people direction and you give them those bite-sized pieces to make progress, I think that does a great deal to reduce that anxiety and reduce that insecurity, at least what I've seen with clients.
Yeah. So herein lies the problem, right? Is part of this issue is we financial planners in general have this like approach to financial well-being that we want you to think 30, 20, whatever years down the road. And we're going to show you this magic number of like dollars that you're supposed to have. And if you can, you're successful. So for the next 20 or 30 years, let's just have our bodies learn how to live in this like unsure state to where every time the market drops a little bit, you're anxious. Every time your net worth changes or fluctuates or money's in motion or you have to spend money, there's some guilt or shame or anxiety. Let's learn this for 20 or 30 years. Then all of a sudden, one day, 65, whatever, one day you're fine and you can just be happy and content.
Yeah.
That doesn't work. That does not work at all. And the problem that, like, let me give you an example. When I was in the military, most people know that. When specifically when I came home from Iraq, I remember coming home from Iraq and I was in this brain space that was so important to be in when I was in Iraq. And the counselor that I was seeing, like there's a term, it's hypervigilance, right? So I was so alert to everything going on. It was just creating this like intense stress. I was in Iraq for quite some time. My body, it was fight or flight. My brain turned on. I lived in this hypervigilant state for months and months and months. And when I came home, I was not just able to turn it off. I had to learn how to turn it off, right? Like it was a process, and I had to work with someone. Not saying everybody has to work with someone, but I needed that. I needed the coaching and the guide to take me down this path of learning how to reduce my hypervigilance, like not needing to be aware of every single piece of trash on the side of the road when I'm driving, or what color t-shirt, or where somebody's hands were as they walked past me in a crowd. I needed to learn how to relax. That was only after like, I think 14 or 15 months that I was over there that my body was stuck in this state. So if I'm asking you to be in this unsure and anxious state for the next 20 or 30 years, and then I'm just going to magically show you something when you're 65 and you're going to be like, I think of a commercial. There was one commercial where, this advisor just calls a client and be like, hey, I got great news. Like, you can retire today. And as soon as you see that, you're just like, oh, well, this person is now happy because of that one phone call. Like, everything about their brain and their emotional state and their well-being just changed all of a sudden.
Yeah.
But it doesn't work that way.
Yeah.
Right? So if my deduction's true, if financial security is an emotion, there's good news. The good news is we can learn how to start feeling emotional security or financial security today.
Yeah.
It's a journey. You're not going to, if you haven't been there, you're probably not going to accomplish that today, but you can start the process of learning how to be secure, how to start taking those next steps, how to start changing our behaviors, how to start changing our expectations, our mindsets, our thoughts, our relationship, understanding that our past like interaction with money is actually influencing our present interaction with money and finances.
Yeah, something you said, if I can jump in,
absolutely.
Something you said just shot through my brain. I was watching a football game the other day, and it was the 49ers, and they're getting all hyped up for the game. And the one guy who's, hyping up all his teammates, he said, the journey's the dream. And he kept, the journey's the dream, baby. We're here. Journey is the dream. Let's go.
Yeah.
And that's been rattling around in my head for a while. It's kind of, I think that's pretty relevant, is, finding contentment in whatever stage of the process you're in and whatever part of the journey you're in. And, I'm sure you've seen this too, but not worrying about the past so much as, oh man, I wish I did this 20 years ago. It's all about the personal growth and getting on that journey, and being content, I think, is a huge part of that.
I have been stuck, and this is not my own thought. I don't remember where I read it or heard it, but something to the effect of, the past is good for like guilt and regret.
Yeah.
The future is good for anxiety and fear. And the present is good for everything else.
Yeah.
Right. So like, if you want to experience joy and contentment and all these things, you have to settle down. And like, if you're a person whose brain has, like, because of fight or flight, because of survival, you've had to think about tomorrow, you've had to think about the next week. Like, if you grew up in a state or place where like you may not have food tomorrow, or you may not have a place to live next month, you might have to learn how to undo those things, right? And that is a process. It is a journey. And if you can start it by just taking seconds and being like, hey, like right now, feet are on the ground. Something that I, like, if I start getting worked up about things, like I'll sit there and I'll just say, hey, like, I'm dry. I'm not cold.
Yeah.
Nobody's shooting at me.
That's a big one.
Right. And like, if you just tell yourself like 3 things, like you could realize you're so much better off than some of the places you've been before.
Oh yeah.
And that right there could make you feel kind of safe, right? Like, what do you need to tell yourself? What can you stop a few times a day and tell yourself?
Yeah.
If we start working, and it's hard work. So I talked about the good news. The good news of financial security being emotion is we can start the journey of feeling financial security, feeling financially secure. If the bad news, it's hard work.
Right.
It's hard work. Think about the number of people that are seeing professionals for anything and everything from past trauma to like ADHD to, fear, like whatever it might be. A lot of people are working with people every day, and they're doing that because the path to healing your emotional and physical self, or your emotional and psychological self, is wildly difficult, and especially hard to do it by yourself.
Yeah, that's correct.
So the good news, you can start to change, because I do believe that the idea of financial security is an emotion. It's not a number. Has nothing. There's no magic number that, if you get to this, you're going to be happy. You might be like able to spend that much money, but you're not necessarily going to be content or happy. The bad news, it's hard work. It's hard work, and generally takes a team. So that's kind of the ideas behind the email we sent out. If you want to be on that email distribution, you can check us out. HarpWithWealthPartners.com. Just reach out to us and just let us know you'd like to be on that Sunday series email. We can get you hooked up to that. If you want to start taking these small steps, we have an incredible financial planning app. It's a process. It's educational. It's a journey. It's engagement every month. It's a monitoring so you can see progress, and it is full of those personalized next steps for you. So
it's fantastic.
We would love for you guys to reach out, inquire about that as well. But that is all I got. Looking forward to the next episode. Bill, any parting thoughts?
Just happy to be a part of the journey, man.
Yeah. All right, guys. Emotional or financial security. It's an emotional decision, not a number. See you guys.
Adios.
We hope you learned from our conversation today. It is important to us that you know this is for educational purposes and not intended to be considered specific advice for any individual listener. If something we discussed is relevant to you and you have questions of how it might be applicable to your specific situation, please reach out to your financial professional. Of course, we are happy to have further conversations with you regarding specific questions or applications to your individual financial situation. With that, here are a few disclosures. Securities offered through LPL Financial, member FINRA, SIPC. Investment advice offered through Private Advisor Group, a registered investment advisor. Private Advisor Group and Harpeth Wealth Partners are separate entities from LPL Financial. The opinions voiced in this material are for general information only and are not intended to provide specific advice or recommendations for any individual. To determine which strategies or investments may be suitable for you, consult the appropriate qualified professional prior to making a decision. All performance referenced is historical and is no guarantee of future results. All indices are unmanaged and may not be invested into directly. Hypothetical examples presented are not representative of any specific investments. Your results may vary. With that, thank you, and we look forward to having you back. Take care.